On National Security Education Day, Xia Baolong says Hong Kong needs to stay vigilant against anti-China forces. Chief Executive John Lee says Hong Kong needs to speed up legislative work of Article 23. And bomb exploded near Japanese Prime Minister. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. Today is the National Security Education Day. Xia Baolong, director of the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office, spoke at a main event commemorating the occasion. He said the current stable situation in Hong Kong was not easy to come by and that the city needs to stay vigilant against anti-China forces. Veronica Lin has the story.
On the third day of his visit to Hong Kong, Xia Baolong arrived at the Convention and Exhibition Center this morning to attend the opening ceremony of the National Security Education Day. He was accompanied by Chief Executive John Lee and Zheng Yanxiong, Director of the Beijing's Liaison Office in Hong Kong. Opening ceremony, everyone stood solemnly and sang the national anthem. In his speech, the director of the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office emphasized his willingness to share his real views on issues on the safeguarding of national security and that the city can't afford a repeat of the 2019 social unrest. He added that the MT extradition law protests are a permanent scar on Hong Kong's history that hangs over everyone's heads. Dare we allow Hong Kong to descend into chaos again? Xia said. We absolutely cannot let anti-China disruptors harm the interests of Hong Kong, he added. He said the city needs to stay vigilant against anti-China activities while all law-abiding Hong Kong citizens can exercise their rights. Safeguarding national security and expressing one's opinion or making demands are not contradictory, he added.
Hong Kong society seems to be calm now. However, we have subcurrents. The sources of the chaos had not been rooted out. We need to continue to build the security. We have to be very vigilant that street riots would come back. We have to be vigilant that bad things are done under the table and behind the scene, and especially those separatist activities in the name of freedom, human rights.
Xia also explained that there are numerous ways to express interests and demands, not just through demonstrations. While some residents are reluctant to comment on the national security law, others say it doesn't really affect their quality of life in Hong Kong.
For me, it's still a great city to live in. I mean, you know, I love living here. I'll continue to live here. In terms of quality of life, it hasn't affected me so much.
Conferences will be held and moderated by 3 secretaries on topics such as national security, financial and cybersecurity. Xia Baolong says whatever challenges the youth may face, the country will support and nurture them. Veronica Lin, TVB News.
Xia Baolong also said Beijing supports the city's efforts to improve its legal system, including completing the legislation of Article 23 of the Basic Law. Chief Executive John Lee said Hong Kong has the constitutional duty to safeguard national security. Director of the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office, Xia Baolong, said today the central government fully supports Hong Kong to complete the legislative work of Article 23 of the Basic Law.
Be it common law or continental law, to safeguard national security remains the one single objective. Under a common law system, this goal can also be achieved. Under the Basic Law, Hong Kong continues to have a common law system, and it is supportive of the legislative and judicial efforts in Hong Kong, including the Basic Law.
Chief Executive John Lee also spoke this morning. He said the national security law has turned chaos into peace and Hong Kong is back to how it used to be. The road forward, he said, is to beware of possible threats, and one of the ways is to speed up legislative work on Article 23 of the Basic Law.
global political changes, as well as other forces, other external forces that are against Hong Kong, against China, creating rumors and defaming Hong Kong and China. We must be vigilant and we must plan ahead of time. We must be alert to face any possible further upsurges and instabilities. We are also studying into crowdfunding as well as other potential problematic actions. We would optimize the risk management for financial security.
Meanwhile, Director of Beijing's liaison office in Hong Kong, Zheng Yanxiong, hailed the success of the national security law, adding it must consolidate the city's stability. Zheng added it's important for the city to come together to fight against anti-China or anti-Hong Kong forces. To commemorate National Security Education Day, the Security Bureau and 5 government disciplined forces held a flag-raising ceremony at the Hong Kong Police College this morning. Chief Secretary for Administration Eric Chan said everyone is responsible for maintaining national security, adding the city has implemented its national security law effectively. Mimosa Ngai reports.
This morning, a guard of honor marched to mark the start of a flag-raising ceremony held at the Hong Kong Police College in Wong Chuk Han. They were followed by 5 disciplined forces, including police, immigration, and customs. There were also youth groups. The ceremony was officiated by Chief Executive for Administration Eric Chan, Secretary for Security Chris Tan, and leaders of the 5 disciplinary forces. This is the 3rd National Security Education Day since the implementation of Hong Kong's national security law. In his opening speech, Chan said the SAR has been able to regain its governance and prosperity as a result of the law. He also mentioned young people are the backbone of national security. Meanwhile, to enhance residents' awareness, the 5 training schools of disciplinary forces held open days. At the police college, demonstrations were showcased to the public, such as counter-terrorism. Children also dressed up as traffic police and rode on motorbikes. This woman brought her son to the police open day and said she wanted her child to understand national security. Visitors at the Immigration Service Institute of Training and Development in Tuen Mun experienced the work of immigration officers. There were also shooting and VR games for more active individuals. Residents who managed to visit the different training schools today had pre-registered online for free admission tickets. Mimosa Ngai, TVB News.
Today was the 3rd day of Xia Baolong, Director of the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office's visit to the city. The motorcade carrying Xia arrived at around 2:30 p.m. at the City Gallery in Central. He was received by Chief Executive John Lee, Secretary for Transport and Logistics Lam Sai-hung, as well as Bernadette Lin, Secretary for Development. An exhibition was held at the gallery introducing the city's urban development and infrastructure. Xia then visited the new territory's Hung Yuen Wai Control Point, where Lin introduced to him the northern metropolis area and the progress made in building the Kao Yi Chau artificial islands. Xia said in his speech that demonstration is not the only way to express demands. Some commentators think his words do not mean that there should be no more demonstrations, but rather a reminder that the rules should be observed. In reference to the latest protest in Cheung Pon O, where protesters had to wear number tags around their necks, ex-co-convener Regina Ip thinks tags are a common way for identification, just like one that she wore for today. Tam Yo Chung, vice chairman of the Chinese Association of Hong Kong and Macau Studies, does not think Xia Baolong is saying no to demonstrations. But rather, Tam said organizers should be aware of strangers with political motivations blending into a procession with an aim to disrupt peace and order. Meanwhile, political heavyweight Maria Tam thinks the central message of Xia's speech was that Hong Kong should stay alert while safeguarding national security and maintaining prosperity. Overseas, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida was evacuated unharmed after an explosive device was thrown at him during a campaign event in Wakayama Prefecture in western Japan. An arrest was made as security piled on top of a man amid chaotic scenes. David Garrett reports.
The Prime Minister of Japan with his back to us. He glances back as something lands near him. A man is wrestled to the ground by security. People scatter in all directions. No one is sure what is happening. The suspect is dragged away. Shot from another angle, these pictures show a suspect detained and restrained on the ground before the explosion. Smoke in the air, Fumio Kishida is quickly ushered away. The area where he was due to give a speech left vacant. People quickly clear the area. Journalists and members of the public film the man being dragged away. The scene is a reminder of the assassination of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who was shot dead last year. The government moved quickly to reassure Chief Cabinet Secretary Matsuno. Police are investigating the suspect's identity and motive, Matsuno said, with local elections scheduled next weekend. Elections are the foundation of democracy. Violence like this cannot be tolerated. Japan is considered a very safe country, but these people are concerned. This office worker says this case follows on from Abe. I think people are reassessing the idea of stump speeches. Anyway, I'm glad Kishida is fine. It's not even been a year since Abe, says this woman in Karizawa. Leaders from many countries are coming to town. This level of security is necessary. She's referring to the Group of 7 foreign ministers meeting on Sunday. Japan is due to host the G7 summit next month. Kishida's office said the Prime Minister was unharmed. He continued on the campaign trail just hours later amid tight security. Kishida appeared in good spirits and didn't mention the incident as he greeted the public in the rain in Chiba. David Garrett, TVB News.
China has refused to let U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken visit Beijing over concerns that the FBI will release the results of an investigation into the downed alleged Chinese spy balloon, according to a report from the Financial Times. Meanwhile, Blinken is on his first visit to Vietnam, where he met the country's Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh. Daniel Rao tells us more.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken held talks in Hanoi today with Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh. Their meeting came just 2 weeks after the 50th anniversary of the withdrawal of American combat forces from South Vietnam. Blinken said during the past decade there has been extraordinary progress in ties between the two countries. Chin said both sides were looking to elevate ties to a new height.
3, 2, 1.
Blinken also broke ground on a new U.S. embassy compound in Hanoi after meeting the Prime Minister.
Congratulations.
He said the project represents a significant step towards strengthening ties.
The ties that connect our countries, Vietnam and the United States, have grown stronger and stronger. And that's happened in no small part because of our renewed diplomatic presence in Hanoi.
Blinken is also meeting today with his Vietnamese counterpart, Bui Tan Son, and the head of Vietnam's ruling Communist Party. Blinken will depart for Japan on Sunday to attend a meeting of foreign ministers of the Group of 7 industrialized nations. Meanwhile, according to a report from the Financial Times, China has refused to let Blinken visit Beijing after an earlier cancellation by Blinken himself in February over concerns that the FBI will release the results of an investigation into the downed alleged Chinese spy balloon. The newspaper, citing 4 people familiar with the negotiations, said China told the United States it wasn't prepared to reschedule a trip. Daniel Rao, TVB News.
Still ahead on tonight's news. More unrest in France as Constitutional Council approved pension reform. Suspected leaker of U.S. military secrets goes to court. And U.S. President Joe Biden says he'll run for the top job again. Welcome back to TVB News. There were more riots in Paris as the Constitutional Council approved Emmanuel Macron's pension reform. The age to claim retirement benefit has been raised to 64 years old. People took to the streets of the capital to protest following the decision by the 9-member panel. There were more scenes of unrest as the proposal became law. Objects were thrown and set on fires as police fired tear gas. Over 100 people were arrested. The French president has pushed ahead with his plan despite criticism and widespread disorder. There were also disturbances in Lyon and other areas. Unions have called for nationwide strikes in May and have vowed to continue to fight the legislation. In the U.S., the man accused of leaking highly classified documents related to U.S. and NATO military supplies to Ukraine appeared in a Boston court Friday. As prosecutors unsealed charges, it revealed how billing records and interviews with social media comrades helped pinpoint the suspect. Tracy Furness has more.
6 feet into space, will you?
The parents of Jack Teixeira, suspected of leaking highly classified military documents, declined to comment as they left the courthouse following a court appearance by their son. 21-year-old Teixeira appeared in court to face charges under the Espionage Act of unauthorized removal and retention of classified and national defense information. No cameras were allowed in court as federal magistrate judge ordered him held until a detention hearing next week. Teixeira was arrested by heavily armed tactical agents on Thursday following a week-long criminal investigation into the disclosure of government records, a breach that exposed to the world unvarnished secret assessments on the war in Ukraine and capabilities and geopolitical interests of other nations and other U.S. national security issues. Legal experts say if convicted, Teixeira could face at least 15 years behind bars.
The bottom line is, he signed a secrecy non-disclosure agreement. He took proper training, as all of us who have access to classified information do, as to we cannot take this information out of secure facilities. You cannot copy it. You cannot certainly disseminate it to third parties without authorization. So why he did it, irrelevant. That he did it, that's basically all the government needs.
As he was about to fly back home from a state visit to Ireland, President Joe Biden told reporters he had instructed the Pentagon to investigate the leaks.
Yes, I've instructed the department to make sure that they get to the root of why he had access in the first place, number one, and number two, to focus extensively on the extent to which it all occurred. And that's going on right now.
Teixeira was recently promoted to Airman First Class and assigned to the 102nd Intelligence Wing of Otis Air National Guard Base. Despite its low rank, the technology position would have given him access to classified information. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
U.S. President Joe Biden told reporters on Friday that he has decided to run for a second term and would formally announce his re-election campaign relatively soon. Biden made the comments as his emotional 3-day trip to Ireland drew to a close in his ancestral hometown of Ballina in County Mayo.
Everything between Ireland and America runs deep. Our history, our heritage, our sorrows, our future, our friendship, our joys. But more than anything, hope is what beats in the hearts of all our people. For centuries, even during times of darkness and despair, hope has kept us marching forward toward a better future. One of greater liberty, greater dignity, and greater possibilities.
The tour of Ireland, the longest ever by a sitting U.S. president, allowed Biden to indulge in days of light-hearted banter and endless photo ops. However, the visit also featured some meandering speeches and the occasional gaffe as observers watched for signs of how well the 80-year-old may perform on the campaign trail. Biden's approval ratings are stuck in the low 40, and he would be 86 by the end of a prospective second term, 9 years older than the average U.S. male life expectancy. Doctors declared Biden fit for duty after an examination in February. Biden's expected presidential pitch is to finish the job after a first term that included several legislative wins, including billions of dollars in federal funds to tackle the COVID pandemic and for new infrastructure. The U.S. state of Montana has passed a bill to ban popular short-form video app TikTok from operating in the state. The bill would prohibit mobile app stores from offering TikTok for download to users in Montana. The Montana House voted 54-43 to approve the ban. TikTok, as well as Apple and Google, which operate mobile app stores, would face fines if they violate the ban should the bill become law. In a statement, TikTok said, "We will continue to fight for TikTok users and creators in Montana whose livelihoods and First Amendment rights are threatened by this egregious government overreach. TikTok is owned by Chinese tech company ByteDance. It is facing growing calls by U.S. lawmakers to ban the app nationwide over concerns about potential Chinese government influence over the platform. Back locally, government expert Lau Yu-leung said while COVID cases have rebounded in Hong Kong, the impact on society has been minimal. Lau added the number of flu cases have also seen an increase, urging students to receive flu vaccines promptly. Meanwhile, Rutonji Hospital has had a cluster of COVID infections with 8 patients testing positive. Hong Kong has entered the post-pandemic era. The city's COVID cases have been fluctuating from 107 positive cases in early March to around 200 in the past 2 days. However, Lau Yu-leung, the government expert, urged the public not to worry as the number of infections is of little significance and most people show mild symptoms. Speaking on the flu, he said the vaccination rate among vulnerable groups is not ideal, suggesting people receive vaccines soon. And that's the news for tonight. Thanks for watching.